thank you for taking the time.
Oh, thank you
for coming out to the Magic Valley, and thank you for the opportunity to ask some of the questions that the women of my boutique and our community have submitted. And I look forward to getting to know you a little bit better with these questions.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Tommy. So let's start by you telling us a little bit about yourself. I've never met you before. It's the first time I'm meeting you, so I'm interested to know your roots in Idaho and a little bit about yourself and your background.
So I was born and grew up on a small farm in Utah and came to Idaho in the 80s and played college basketball at Rick's College. We used to play against CSI when I played here. Then I went to medical school and became a doctor, and then residency in Tucson, Arizona at the University of Arizona, and became an emergency room doctor. Came back to Idaho and practiced medicine here for a total of 18 years in medicine. So I've seen over 40,000 patients in an ER. I love that part of my life. I very, very much enjoy being a doctor and caring for people, especially in the ER in their time of greatest need. It was an amazing time for me. Now, the business of healthcare changed quite a bit during that time. I'm married to my high school sweetheart. We've been married 20 and a half years. We have 4 children, 2 older ones, and then we have 2 younger ones that we adopted that are 14 and 12. And so those are our kids. I consider myself more of a business guy than I do a doctor. I've always owned my own businesses. So in high school, I had businesses. In college, I had my own businesses. And then when I went into emergency medicine, I knew that it would allow me to do a lot of things on the side because you do shift work. So I would work night shifts and mostly weekends for the first 10 years. And it would allow me to start several businesses. So I own a med tech company. I've owned other traditional businesses. And then I started a commercial real estate company. And we've developed and own over 3 million square feet of commercial real estate in Idaho. So that's been an amazing journey. I've very, very much enjoyed my time in business and in medicine.
Thank you for telling me about that. I didn't know all of that. I didn't know that you were in the emergency part of medicine and the business, the entrepreneurship background too. That's really interesting to me. Where do you see our local economy going, and where do you see your role in guiding Idaho to a global competitive market in our 21st century workforce?
That's a great question. And as a small business owner yourself and as an entrepreneur, I think that the value of having been a doctor and understanding medicine, and then all of my experience in business where we've actually created jobs, signed the front of paychecks, paid taxes, done all the things that you do as a small business owner, I think the question I always ask myself is, what is the proper role of government, right? And I think if you are always asking that question, the role of government should be to be as effective as it can be in providing the services we need, but also maybe getting out of the way when it should. And that balance is very important. And those principles of hard work and free enterprise and free markets and free people, it's what's made us so great as a country. And so I think the role of government is, we have great people. I mean, if you look at the work ethic, I mean, you didn't create all this without being driven and having a work ethic and a vision of what you want to do. We have that in this state. We need a government that works as hard as we do to provide those things. So tax policy is important. How are we taking care of small businesses and families with tax policy? Education is critical. The fuel of our economy, the entire foundation of our economy is education. And if we get that right, both K-12 and higher education, to get our kids ready for Idaho jobs, so Idaho kids ready for Idaho jobs, it will do wonders for us. And then healthcare. You know, we're in a crisis right now in the United States of America. Well, healthcare costs, or at least pricing, has gone out of control for so long that it's threatening the very fabric of our country because families and businesses are not being able to afford healthcare anymore. Those are the things that government should do, is be as efficient and make the environment as favorable as we can for then the individuals to be able to thrive, to create jobs, and to grow.
I'm glad you brought up education. This is an area that I'm very passionate about. I served on our school board here in Twin Falls because I do care very much about the future of my own students or my own children and the students of our state, because at the end of the day, I recruit that talent to work with, collaborate with on projects, and the better off they are, the better they are as consumers and contribute to the economy with their talent and also with spending. And in business, everyone wants to make sure that people are well off at the end of the day. So talking about education, we know Idaho is not doing very well in education, and in a lot of ways we're failing our children. We're rating the lowest in the nation year after year, decade after decade, and not only that, but then our talented people that are graduating are leaving and migrating to other states, other cities, and contributing to their economy, their community. So what is your plan? How do we raise our education standards? Where is the role of government in that? And how do we compete with the rest of the nation and the world? Because it's an interdependent now talent pool and a talent-driven economy.
So your question has very well articulated exactly where we sit as a state. And we've been here a long, long time. We have a lot of people that care about our kids. I mean, of course we do. And there's people all over this state that are passionate about trying to make things better. The problem is the dial is not moving. We're not changing. And so my plan as the outsider, not as the career politician coming into this, is to do what you do in the real world. Believe data. Say what's working, what's not working, and scale the things that are working in our state. And we need to shake this thing up and actually do a modern education for a modern economy in Idaho. The good news is we're probably 20 years behind. Let's not claw back 20 years. Let's just leap forward and get modern education for a modern economy. So this is what you do. First of all, we need better leadership at the top. We need accountability at the top, and I'm talking at the state board and Department of Education level and in the governor's office, to where we hold ourselves accountable to the families and people of Idaho. Second, we need clearly defined goals for our school districts. We don't do that. I've been around this state now. There's 115 school districts, and I've interviewed most of those schools. I've toured their schools. I just toured your school, one of your high schools here today. We do not give clarity on what the goals even are. So in the real world, that's step number one. You have clarity around that vision, and you say, here's where we're clearly going. Then we need to allow more autonomy at the teacher level. We're blaming our teachers. We're layering them with mandates and regulations instead of doing what we should be doing, which is giving clear goals and then letting them teach our kids. There's lots of different ways in Idaho that our kids are achieving excellence. In a lot of schools that are doing things very innovatively, in some that are doing them very traditionally. But the bottom line is, are they getting our kids ready for the workforce? When I'm governor, I will not rest until two things happen. Every single kid in Idaho should have two pathways. Pathway one is a vocational education to a job. And actually here in your community, this works pretty well because of CSI, right? So every kid ought to be connected to a technical job where there's line of sight and they're ready to receive the skills they need to get into that job. And if they choose college, then there's pathway two, which is how quickly can we get you in and to a job with a 2 or 4 year degree. We don't think about that right now. We make it very clunky and hard in Idaho for our Idaho kids to get through higher education. And our higher education needs to be completely plugged into our economy so that our kids stay here. They're our most precious resource. They're the answer to our future. And yet too many of them grow up and don't have these pathways for success, so they leave Idaho and never come back. We will change that by turning it on its head.
That leads to my next question. And how do we rebrand Idaho? How do we rebrand Idaho so that we are not losing talent and that we retain the talent here and don't have this brain drain and skill gap and teacher shortage? So we do the education, we reform our education, or we upgrade our education to fit a modern workforce. But how do we rebrand Idaho?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I've never been asked that question. I like questions I've never been asked because now that we're on the road all the time, we don't have to rebrand Idaho. If you think about Idaho, what we're built on is heritage and values of hard work and a can-do spirit that is unequaled in most of this country. That is who we are. What we need to do is build an even better Idaho on that foundation. So let's take our heritage and our value. Let's take that mindset of, hey, we can do anything because we're Idaho, right? We have heritage that is amazing. As I've traveled this state, there are so many wonderful, amazing people who want the best for their children and want the best for this state. They're people that understand free markets, free people, hard work. They don't want handouts. They want a pathway to success. So let's take that and let's give them policies and a government that's as good as they are. Let's have a world-class education. Let's be top 5 in the country. Let's create tax policy that allows businesses to thrive. Let's not lose our kids. Not one kid. Let's keep them here with a job that they can afford to live and thrive in Idaho. If we start thinking like that and build on, not rebrand, but build on our brand, which is hard work. I mean, when you say you're from Idaho, people think, hey, you know how to work. You understand freedom. You understand free markets. Let's take that brand and build an even better Idaho.
Where do you stand, and what is your plan to lead in the funding of statewide preschool programs?
So I think that our K-12 education is a mess. And the last thing I think we need to do today is have the state be the one that implements another program that we don't even do K-12 well. So, but I do believe, and I'm going to tell you a story there. I was on the United Way board for a long time, and there's these things called promise neighborhoods around the country where communities have come together to provide needed services to families and people. And we visited a few years ago down in Salt Lake these promise neighborhoods where they have been able to go into a school and go into an area and say, what do you need? And let it be grassroots and let the people in the community come together to do what's needed most. Pre-K is essential. No one's going to argue that kids that come into school ready to learn do better, and we have to have these kids reading by 3rd grade or we lose them. So no one will argue with the data that we need pre-K. The question is, how do we go about getting it? And in Caldwell, Idaho this year, we came back, pulled people out of silos with United Way, and now in every one of those elementaries they offer pre-K without government involvement. That's the kind of programs I think we go after. So pre-K is important, but let's not have the government, the state, be the one that does this. Let's use some innovation. Let's use some examples around us of how we get there, and let's get our kids ready for school and families. You know, the government's never going to be a replacement for a family, and shouldn't be. And we've got parents all around the state that need to understand the importance of reading to their kids, the importance of exposing their kids to the things they need before they get into kindergarten, and getting them ready for us to then take and go with. So I think sometimes the easy path is to avoid that conversation, which is we also need our parents to say, hey, we have a role in this. Let's get our kids ready. And then for those kids that cannot do that, let's find ways in the community. We have so many wonderful people that want to help, that want to be part of something bigger than they are. Let's get them together and provide those services.
Speaking of families and parents, and the parental factor is huge in education achievement and success of a student. The problem is that many of our children either don't have a parent in the home, or they have a family situation where it's a one-parent home, or the Kim family is taken care of. A lot of our grandparents are taking care of children and raising them. So the contributing factor that, at least in our community, that I've heard brought up is the opiate and meth epidemic that is not new to Idaho and is not new to the Magic Valley. We've had this on the rise, and now heroin is on the rise in our community in Twin Falls. So what's encouraging is hearing now a president that is echoing that and making it a national crisis. What do we do in Idaho? Where do you see the role of government and local government and schools in the preventative space of ending this epidemic, or at least interrupting it, and then on the recovery end? Could you speak on that a little?
And I don't know if you've seen our policy we've released on our platform over opioids. So as an ER doctor, this is the world that I lived in for all these years. That's where people go when they overdose. It's where people go when they die. And we know that we have a huge crisis. You know, years ago when I first started practicing medicine, it was all methamphetamine. Then it was cocaine. But now it's prescription drugs. Something happened a few years ago that we didn't realize happened. So the most commonly abused street drug, opioid, was hydrocodone or Vicodin. It was Norco. It was everywhere, and you could buy it for $10 or $15, and that's what people were using to treat their habit. That became harder to get when that prescription became triplicate and is treated like Percocet now. So now it's more expensive and harder to get prescription drugs, even though that's still a problem. So that's why people are turning to heroin. Well, the problem there is when you're on prescription drugs, it's actually harder to overdose because they're oral medicines than it is when you go to heroin and now you're on IV medicine. So we have a problem. So the first thing is we need to talk about this problem. In Ada County, which is our largest county where I live, in the first 15 days of this year, there were 11 deaths from opioid overdoses. So it's awareness. So my plan is to declare the state of emergency in the state. Let's get awareness out there. And then it's all hands on deck. We need awareness and education up front, both to our physicians and to our people, of the dangers of this. We also need treatment programs. If you're hooked on an opioid, for whatever reason you got on it, a lot of people go in and have a surgery. And they never intend. You don't have a big back surgery to get hooked on a medicine. But the way the drug interacts with our cells in our body is the longer you're on it, the more you need of it, for everyone. And so it's just really hard to get off if you don't have help. So we need to invest into treatment programs that actually allow the help that people need to get off. And we need to realize that a few dollars invested on treatment is going to save hundreds and hundreds of dollars on the back end, and tragedy in our state on the back end once people fall off the cliff. And then lastly, we need a Narcan program. So the medicine you give when someone overdoses completely reverses opioid effects on our body, and you can save someone. So we need our first responders to have this available in all of our communities. We need to train them on usage, and we need a statewide plan on how to make sure we pay for that and have it in stock, because it does have a shelf life. So I think it's a comprehensive plan. We need it now. We need to be talking about it. We need awareness, but too many people are dying unnecessarily in Idaho right now. We need to change that.
I appreciate that you don't shy away from the reality of just how much of a crisis it is, and that you understand that the first thing that we really must do in the community, in the state, is break away from our addiction to the taboo, to the stereotypes, and to the stigma, because we do have a narrative going on that's what's keeping us from actually addressing.
Well, that's an excellent question, and you have a lot of awareness. You understand what goes on, and when I go give these talks, I always tell people, in your family or in your business or wherever, you probably have someone that you know and love that has an addiction. And there's some shame that is involved in there, because no one intends, or most people don't intend to start these medicines and get hooked. But once they get hooked, it is impossible for them to stop without help. If you're a physician treating someone that's addicted and you go in, it's a lot easier to kind of kick them down the road than it is to go through the treatment plan, and there's not a lot of options for treatment. So you're right, it's awareness, and it's a lot of treatment, and it's a lot of education that's going to get us where we need to be on this one.
Thank you. If elected governor, what is your plan on health care for high-risk uninsured Idahoans?
So this one probably needs a longer answer than you want, because it's a mess. So when I started in medicine 25 years ago, when you went to the doctor, you would get charged what it cost. Okay? Bad policy from both parties for 25 years has made it so that you don't get charged what it costs for healthcare anymore. We all know this. We get charged what they can price it at. Okay? We need to stop the current narrative in America and in Idaho of consistently saying, how do we fuel the beast more? How do we give more money to this? There's no amount of money that will solve this. It will continue to eat as much money as we throw at it until we finally stop and say, okay, in Idaho, how can we start talking about cost of care and how to deliver that care to people at what it costs? If we start talking about that, we can make a difference. So there's 4 things that I talk about everywhere I go. 1, we need to reform Medicaid for personal accountability and caps on spending in Medicaid, and make sure that that's available for all the people that need it most. We're threatening the very bottom of our safety net, because we're saying that Medicaid's the answer for every single person. It's not. That is for the absolute people that can't afford it. Now we tackle how to make healthcare affordable. That's what we need to talk about, and that's using a high-risk pool to make sure people have medical homes, the prescriptions they need, the primary care doctors, the preventative medicine so they don't get sick. We need insurance reform that allows us to be flexible and bring plans down. Can you imagine if your policies were 50% or 60% less than they are now? How many more people could afford an insurance plan? Well, right now they're just not affordable for the average person in Idaho. And then lastly, we need transparency. If we don't have transparency in medicine, there's so much hypocrisy. We always tell patients, hey, be responsible for your care, make good choices, but then we don't tell them what the price options are around it. We don't. So we need to make sure we get transparency, and there are ways to have tools that the state can help with to ensure that every Idahoan can decide where they're going to go for the cost and quality of their care. That information is out there, it just doesn't make it to patients. So we'll do that when I'm governor.
So I've told you a little bit about my background, about my family coming here to the United States as refugees and to Twin Falls with the relocation center, the resettlement center that is here with CSI. Where do you stand on immigration and refugees? I understand they're two separate, I'm trying to make the question fit, but they're two separate issues. But where do you stand on immigration and refugees? What is the path forward in Idaho for migrant workers, refugees, and residents who have immigrated to Idaho and are contributing members of Idaho's way of life, economy, and future?
So that's a big question, and it's a complicated question with a lot of federal implications, right? It's our federal government that controls a lot of this. But I'll start talking first about immigration. When I trained in medicine, I was in Tucson, Arizona, and I worked right on the border in emergency rooms. We have a border problem in the United States of America, a huge border problem. And most countries don't have the same problem we have. We have got to fix our border problem. If you don't fix that, everything else that happens downstream really is a byproduct of not being able to control borders. Third world countries for decades have controlled their borders. This should not be that hard in America, and until you fix that, it really is step one, because everything else follows. So we fix our borders. Secondly, we need a worker program that works, especially in this area. If you talk to folks here, we need a way that people can come and work and work for these jobs. And then you need to deal with how this bad policy has affected lives for a long time. So it's a step-by-step process, largely driven by the federal government, but I think a governor of a state can help lead and influence with other governors that have like states, and with our delegation to hopefully get something done. It's been a complete failure on the part of Congress in Washington, D.C. for years on immigration, years and years. As far as the refugees go, the only thing that concerns me as an ER doctor, we have a lot of poverty in Idaho. 1 in 3 people in Idaho live in poverty. Just over in the Treasure Valley, there are 2,500 homeless kids in one school district. I don't know how many homeless kids you have here, but it's probably a lot. So I really think
200 and so 200.
And I know you do a lot for them.
Yeah.
So I think I just want to make sure we need a comprehensive way to take care of our people, all of our Idahoans, and make sure that we're helping lift these people out of poverty. And sometimes I worry. I think we just need to make sure we're taking care of people, right, and doing it in a thoughtful way, so that we're not creating more of a problem for our people. And sometimes I worry a little bit about our priorities, and we just need to make sure we always balance that. Life is about balancing the needs of people and doing that in a thoughtful way.
Thank you. Why do you want to be governor, and why should we vote for you?
I think we need leadership in this state to take this. This election's about the future. We have a past in Idaho, again, our heritage and our values, but this election is about who has the ability and who has the qualifications to come in and lead our state into the future. And I believe, with my background in the real world, both in medicine, which is a big deal for us going forward, and in business, and in the ability to get things done in real life. I'm 50 years old. I've been able to really lead and accomplish things that have been very hard. I love surrounding myself with really good people. It's not just me, it's creating a team that demands excellence and integrity, and then going after something hard and getting it done. I can't wait to serve the people of Idaho. I can't wait to make every decision based on what's best for the families and the small businesses of Idaho, and to make Idaho #1 in this nation. I hope that in education, in jobs, in healthcare, we lead the nation. Why can't we? We should be leading the nation with the people we have, if we have a government that's as good as our people.
Absolutely, and people are choosing Idaho for their place to live and settle, and they're moving here, and so that leadership is necessary, not only for the Idahoans that are already here, but the future of Idaho and the Idahoans that are going to become Idahoans when
Right.
they move here. There's a lot of seniors choosing this
Right.
area to retire in, and young families for the cost of living.
That's right.
So thank you for taking the
Thank
time.
you very much.
I
It was
very much
a pleasure.
appreciate
Thank you very much.
And best of luck to you on your campaign train.
Thank
The
you.
primaries are coming up. They are
May 15th.
15th. And so hopefully everybody gets out there, registers, and votes.
Thank you very much.
Thank
And it was nice meeting your children.
Yeah, thank you very
They're
much.
very